Welcome to Bees Along.
We'll have a look at the observation board so you can see how it works before you decide if you want to build one. Notice underneath I have frame sidebar cut to give some support. Now that's the plug that you can take out to put your feeder on, and as you can see I haven't disturbed the bees, or they're flying in the front of the hive because it's pretty busy today. I can see what's going on. You can use this on top of the brood box, or you could put it on the top of a super to see how they were going with the honey production. Now don't forget to put the insulation back. It's absolutely essential to prevent condensation on that perspex. And put your lid on, whether it's a telescoping one or a migratory. My bees are happy. Perspex is not particularly scratch resistant, so that's got the protective film on it. But if you do get any burr comb on it, don't try and scrape it off. You'll have to use some hot water and soap to get it off, and then rinse it thoroughly. Materials you'll need for an 8-frame box. So clear plastic, perspex, 3mm thick, cut to 480 by 330. And then you want some treated pine, 32 by 19. You want 2 at 505 and 2 at 315. That's the end view, 19 by 32. You need the slot 7mm deep. It wants to be 6mm up from the bottom edge, 4mm in width. And then you'll need some screws, 40 by 6 gauge, and some glue. When you've cut all your pieces and routed them, do a dry assembly to make sure that it all fits together with the plastic insert in, and check that it is square. Take it apart and go and paint it. After painting, go along and make sure that all the slots are completely free and the ends don't have a build-up of paint on them. When you screw it together, you'll be screwing on this top. You also want to screw close to this slot, but you don't want the screw to come through and actually hit the perspex, otherwise it will shatter. This pilot hole goes straight down. This pilot hole next to the slot goes at an angle that way. so that when the screw is driven in, it doesn't come anywhere close to the actual perspex. This one's straight. This one at an angle. Just clean up the hole. Turn the rails over and countersink the pilot holes. Now for the assembly. It's easier to assemble if you clamp down at least one rail. You want the slot to be at the bottom when you put it together. I have peeled back the protective coating on both sides and snipped it off with a pair of scissors so it doesn't interfere with the actual putting it together. I've used a couple of pieces of side rail, frame side rail, to act as a spacer. Insert the perspex into the slot. Glue both ends of a side rail, but don't overdo it. You don't want it squishing out all over the place. Put it to one side of your frame. Glue up the other side and put it onto the frame. Now put on the opposite long rail. Clamp the frame together. Make sure it's even at each end and put one screw in the top hole. At the opposite end, one screw at each end in the top hole. Turn the frame over and put the screws each side and insert the other 4 screws. If you have got any glue that's squirted out anywhere, don't try to remove it, otherwise you'll smear it everywhere. Just put the frame to one side and leave it set for 24 hours, then you can clean it up. This step is optional. If you want to use a feeder in the cover, one like this, a round one, or maybe a mason type jar, you need to bore a hole, but be warned, you can easily shatter the perspex. I'm going to attempt to do it and see what happens. Mark where you want the hole to be. And then get a hole saw the correct size. You can see I've put some blocks underneath to support where I drill the hole through. I drilled a 1/8 pilot hole first. See what I mean about it shattering? Go quite slow, otherwise it will burn and stick. A bit hairy, but it went through okay. It didn't shatter. You'll want to retrieve the little disc.
That's a little rain on the roof. The first we've had for months and months.
Retrieve the little disc and remove the protective cover. Then you either want a slightly bigger disc, if you've got a hole saw for that, or even a square piece of about 3 to 4 mil plywood. And then you need to stick the disc to the plywood. Here's the cover with the protective film removed. If you've made it with a feeder hole, you want to give the perspex a little support if you're feeding large quantities of liquid. I've used a piece of side rail from a frame, just cut a bit off. Here's the little disc I made. I've just put a small nut and bolt through. That's to actually stop the bees from climbing up through that hole. That stops the bees coming up nicely. And when you want to feed, you put on whatever feeder you're using. Now it's critical that you insulate inside this cover, because in the evening or in the winter time this perspex will get very cold, and with the heat from the inside the hive, condensation will form on the underside of this and drip down onto whatever is underneath. You can use reflective double bubble cut to size, and I will put a double layer inside here. What I sometimes use are pieces cut from an old floor exercise mat. That makes a good insulation. I've cut it to width and doubled it over and just put a bit of tape on to keep it together. So now you've got a nice insulation to stop condensation. So when you're set up, you can just remove your top cover, remove the insulation, observe your bees, and if necessary, you can feed. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Don't forget to give me a like. Hooroo now.
For future videos and updates, please subscribe, then click the bell.